English translation, 448th contact. Friday, 27th of April, 2007, 13:16 hours.
Hello, Pata. You are brave, my friend, to come wandering down the street in broad daylight. What if someone were to come now?
Greetings, Edward. That would not be so bad, because I am only visible in this short area, that is to say, only in a room with a diameter of 4 meters. You do not know that yet, because it is a new invention that we have been testing for quite some time now, and have found that it works excellently and is useful for certain purposes of ours. So it was created for special projects, and you, now that you are in my shielding area, are not visible from the outside either. But as always, I'm amazed that you are not frightened when I suddenly stood only 2 meters in front of you.
While it is easy to scare me with booze and hootin', etc. when I am walking along lost in thought. But what is connected with you, like the fact that you suddenly appear before me out of nowhere, is something completely different, because I am always prepared for the fact that one of you suddenly appears. So at least in that respect I am not jumpy. But you were supposed to go to, respectively, beam into my office, where I will follow. But first, I have to put this mail delivery from the printer in Bernadette's office, after which I have to go to the kitchen to say something to Silvano. I will not need more than 3 to 4 minutes.
Then I will meet you in your study. Until then.
And here I am. Unfortunately, it took a minute longer. May I ask you something right now?
There is no objection. But there is a surprise for you this afternoon.
Aha! I will take the surprise. Last night I had 2 phone calls, one from Victor from Wyla, and before that one from Priska from Pfeffikon. I have told you about Priska, in connection with Venus, which is why I drove with Patrick to Pfeffikon that night.
I remember that.
Okay, so I got the call. In Pfeffikon last night, Priska saw a big and glowing object that came towards her not very high up in the sky, then stopped, moved again to make a few turns, and then just disappeared without a trace. In Vila, Victor and Adela saw a multicolored object that first flew eastward, then returned, and finally disappeared to the north. It was explained to me that there were also airplanes on the way, but that the objects were most certainly not such. Do you know anything about this?
No, I know nothing about that. In any case, those were none of our flying apparatus, because ours are protected from every perspective, even from all advanced technological and fluidal, that is to say, fine material swinging wave-based tracking capabilities, both in relation to those that are terrestrial as well as those that are foreign to the Earth. Only if we deliberately make our aircraft visible, capable of being detected, or in any way recognizable, can they be sighted or detected, such as with demonstrations, as we allowed these as proofs for you in terms of photographic and film work, or for group members and your friends. Even by all technological and fine material detecting apparatuses of those who are foreign to the Earth, also for the foreigners who are unknown to us, with whom we have searched for contact in vain. We have never been and never are able to be detected, since a detection of our aircraft automatically triggers an alarm, which is why we have always had to make ourselves recognizable in certain cases, and will also have to continue to do so should it be necessary. We have never been detected in such a form in the earthly airspace by any who are foreign to the Earth and who do not belong to us, not to this day, and this will also remain so. Also, with regard to our foreign unknowns, that is to say, those who are foreign to the Earth and whose presence in the earthly airspace has, already for a long time, led to their observation by the Earth humans again and again. These have not been able to locate us yet. Therefore, they have no proofs of our presence. That is, apart from your evidence, which they have been made aware of in some circumstances. But they certainly do not have real proof of our existence, because they cannot possibly locate us and our flying apparatuses. Not even if we make ourselves visible to you, the group members or your friends for a short time, which we will not do for some time anyway, as I already told you some time ago. As for our foreign unknowns, whose origin, technology and task are likewise unknown to us, as you know, it is to be said that at present they continue to appear again and again all over the world and can be observed more frequently. Also, we cannot fathom why our signals, if we aim for them, are dissolved or reflected back to us and thus do not reach their aircraft. Consequently, we cannot establish contact with them, which we also have not tried to do for quite some time. With absolute certainty, it is also to be said that the foreigners do not maintain any contacts with the Earth humans because our worldwide, all-encompassing detection devices, with which we can also detect the presence of our foreign unknowns, would identify such contacts.
There is probably no sense in investigating what Priska observed. But how can you be so sure that the foreigners have never detected you?
The expense for the investigations would be too great because it usually turns out that such phenomena concern earthly flying objects, as we have had to determine over and over again. But in several cases, these were the foreigners who are unknown to us, with whom we cannot come into contact and also no longer try to do, as I just mentioned. And that we can be sure that our flying apparatus have not been detected by the foreigners so far is due to the fact that our highly advanced detection technology indicates to us every detection process in every direction, immediately and without delay, no matter what technology is used for detection.
You spoke of that once and said that this technology, which is unusually high and very futuristic for us Earthlings, is not a development on your part, and neither are your protective shields, which immediately convert all energy hitting them into their own energy. And through this, the protective shields strengthen instead of weaken. If I remember correctly, these forms of technology come from Asket's friendly people, the Sanair in the Dal universe, who are more than 4,000 years ahead of you in relation to your technological development.
The technology mentioned does, in fact, trace back to the Sanair, who have already assisted us for many years in every technological development. Consequently, we have a variety of technologies today that we did not yet have at the beginning of our contacts approximately 30 years ago. So now very many new technologies are available to us, which would have taken up very long development times for us if they had not been provided to us by the Sanair in good friendship.
This probably includes the Dimension Gate, which you are probably still working on, right? Here, on television, there is a series running that is called Stargate, which is roughly comparable with your Dimension Gate. Only its appearance and function are a little different than what you showed me 3 times. In this science fiction on television, a large ring is used, which is equipped with control symbols, and in front of this, there is a kind of control panel. This in contrast to your mechanism, which needs nothing of the sort, but which is set into operation just by a small device on your overalls, out of which nothing appears like a gate flickering at the edges, that is to say, a passageway through which one recognizes the other dimension or the area, etc., that exists beyond the gate. The whole thing works as though one would look through a window or through a door that would have simply been placed in the open countryside.
Yes, this gate is also among the achievements of the Sanair, with whom we have developed it. And in addition, it is to be said that the whole thing became so functional a few weeks ago that it can also be used perfectly and safely for the passage of humans. We can move back and forth through it, both in the present time as well as in different space-time configurations, that is to say, dimensions.
And can you also go to the Dal universe with it?
That is not possible for us, but our engineers and scientists are working together with the Sonair in order to make this a reality.
Then another question about the foreigners, who have already circled around here on Earth for a very long time, as you say, and with whom you cannot enter into contact. Is it possible that these unknowns may come from the future? Perhaps from other planets, or even from the Earth itself, or else from another dimension?
We have also thought about that and have come to the conclusion that this may very well be possible, both the one and the other possibility. The Earth humans will undoubtedly create the possibility of dimension traveling in the distant future, which we have not investigated, however.
And why have you held back in this connection?
We only operate our past and future travels and previews under certain conditions, but not just to know the distant or most distant future, which is why, if necessary, we limit ourselves to a maximum time of 100 years for future investigation, while no boundaries are set for travels to the past. We do not want to know the distant and most distant future for logical reasons, for we know that only the path of normal development leads to the real and correct culmination point. The reason for the limitation of future investigation is so that the present is not influenced as a result of knowing the future, which would disturb the normal course of development. Such a disturbance would not be good because the appearing causes of the ongoing development would naturally be changed and be distorted, which would cause a disaster as an effect. It is not like what many Earth humans suppose, that something could be changed for the better if the facts of the future would be known. For logic proves that the human being behaves totally incorrectly if he or she knows the effective future. For he or she thinks that they could cause something better than what is determined by the logical consistency of cause and effect. This is proven by the absurd ideas of Earth humans, who think that if they traveled to the past, they could change what has already happened in the future.
I understand. Like those who believe that they, for example, could travel back in time, could kill Adolf Hitler, and thus could prevent World War II and all its horrors. This means that the human being always wants to be cleverer and more knowledgeable than what the effective truth and reality are. This is also true with respect to alleged contacts of Earthlings with you or other extraterrestrials. Still, time and time again, fairy tales lurk around that other Earthlings, besides me, would stand in contact with you, Plejaren. Actually, persons of both genders step on the carpet again and again, lying about the fact that they would stand with you, with Simya-Se, with Quetzal, or with other Plejaren, or members of your federation, in telepathic, channeled, or personal, physical contact. Very stupid elements lie about the fact that even other Plejaren, other than you and your whole crew, etc., would have contacts with human beings of the Earth. Nevertheless, this cannot be controlled by you.
According to that which is real, however, such claims are nothing more than pure nonsense and shameful lies.
That is actually so. We have an absolute monitoring of all of our contacts with other civilizations, humanities, and worlds. Therefore, it is absolutely known to me, as an Jeshwish of Era and of our two other worlds, what and where, that is to say with whom, contacts are maintained outside of our worlds. This also applies to our Confederates, who maintain no contacts with any Earth human except with you. But anyone on the Earth who claims to stand in any sort of contact with any people from us Plejaren or from our Confederates is a deliberate liar or is delusionally sick. For as it has already often been said, you are the only human being on the Earth who truly maintains contacts with us. Once again, I want to explain clearly and plainly the following. First of all, we Plejaren and our Confederates live in other space-time configurations, into which no normal telepathic impulses of Earth humans or other inhabitants from this, your space-time configuration, can penetrate. A penetration into our space-time configuration from yours is only possible through spirit telepathy, but no Earth human is capable of this except you. What the Earth human slowly begins to develop solely refers to the first steps of consciousness telepathy. But he or she is still effectively in the smallest children's shoes, as you call it, when something is just at the very beginning of development. That is one thing, while the other relates to the fact that we do not maintain, neither at present nor in the future, any telepathic or personal physical contacts with Earth humans except with you. However, this has its specific reasons, which are based on the fact that you are the only human on Earth, who is linked here since ancient times, through all your old personalities and through your present one, with the mission and who also leads this. And as a herald, that is to say a prophet, you can bring the teaching and can teach and explain them. Thus, our joint contacts are connected with a great and important mission, which also justifies the contacts and gives them a deep meaning. That Earth foreigners, that is to say extraterrestrials, however, would simply include any Earth humans in contacts without any special reason, would be completely contrary to the normal procedure with regard to establishing contact with a foreign humanity. This absurdity also applies to all alleged contacts between Earth humans and any extraterrestrials, where messages of a more or less religious and sectarian character are included, which corresponds to an unnaturalness, that is to say, to a paradox, and all the lies clearly and plainly lead to absurdity. Those few with whom we directly maintain telepathic impulse contacts, and who should have been helpful to you in your mission, have all died, and no others have been requisitioned for the task. And when the last spark of your present life has gone out, it will mean the end of our contacts on the Earth, for when your time has come, we will withdraw ourselves finally from this world. You have brought all that was necessary with regard to the teaching of the Spirit, the teaching of the life, and the teaching of the truth, namely to a much greater extent than what was planned according to destiny. Consequently, what has been brought and taught will be sufficient for the continued learning of Earth humanity for thousands of years. Thus, if lying elements should still appear during your lifetime and thereafter and claim that they stand in contact with us Plejaren, etc., then this would correspond to a matchless lie. And after your existence, we withdraw ourselves finally into our space-time configuration, without ever having to return, for we fulfilled our obligation that was assigned to us by your former personalities and by you at present. Only the old assigned obligation led us to the fulfillment of duty in this space-time configuration, in which you lead your life and fulfill your difficult mission. Only in the very distant future, when Earth humanity has progressed so far on a technological basis, in order to be ready to penetrate into our space-time configuration, will they encounter our worlds and civilizations and be able to take up contact with them. But the way there is still very long and arduous.
Not only am I fulfilling my duty, but all the members of the group who are loyal to me and give me the strength to do my work. Without them, I would never have been able to do what I have done, along with all the many accomplishments that have been made by all members. With regard to the realization and continuation of the mission, the passive members and the friends who contributed to the success of the whole thing with their financial and manual efforts are of course also important. So their efforts must not be forgotten either. Altogether, I owe them a great debt of gratitude, because without them, the mission would not have become what it is today.
I would like to express my deep gratitude to every single member of the core group, as well as to every single passive member and all friends and other helpers.
They will read your words in today's contact sheet. You mentioned recently that terror is increasing in Iraq, And it is interesting to know what kind of humans are doing all these terrorist acts and suicide bombings.
Can you comment on that?
Basically, these are humans who generally lead a simple, righteous, and quiet life, but who are successively and suggestively turned into will-less terror fanatics with regard to two: political religious Islamism by hate preachers and fanatical recruiters with false interpretations of the jihad. These unscrupulously misled ones are usually not recruited in Iraq itself, but in other Arab countries, as well as in the USA and in European states, whereby especially England, France, and Germany, as well as Indonesia and Arab states, are selected for this purpose. Those who would see the hatred are religiously errant, unscrupulous, radical, extremist, fundamentalist, and militant Islamists, for whom human life has no value whatsoever. Therefore, they also recruit righteous Islamic believers who have a certain religious instability and who, with religious lies and heresies as well as with false interpretations of jihad, make them compliant and send them to their deaths, along with many innocent people who die in the bombings and suicide bombings. The leaders of the worldwide terrorist network are unscrupulous fanatics who want to transform religion into social laws and create Islamic God states, where bloody laws and revenge as well as worldly bondage are to apply. It is well known that the USA alone is to blame for all of today's terrorism, because what the USA Army has done in Afghanistan and Iraq is a chaos and terror without equal. The USA alone, through its irresponsible and criminal political and military machinations, has turned Iraq into a country of murderous uprising, terror, disorder, and lawlessness. But guilty are also all those statesmen and U.S. friends of all countries who have supported and continue to support the whole thing, under the patronage of the human and war criminal George Walker Bush, who is the U.S. President.
Religious laws and commandments must never be placed above state and social laws, norms, and personal and worldly freedom. But what you say about the USA, as usual, the righteous U.S. Americans are of course excluded, because they do not go the same way as Bush, his vassals and fellow howlers. But tell me, Ptah, what is new in the predictive sky?
There is nothing extraordinary to mention for the coming days, because something special will only happen at the beginning of May, when in the USA, namely in the state of Kansas, the small town of Greenburg will be completely destroyed by a tornado, which will also claim a small number of lives. Ah, there you are, Florina. That is the surprise for you, Edward, my friend, and what other predictions I have to mention. The English Prime Minister, Tony Blair, will announce on the 10th of May that he will leave office in June.
Hello, dear friend. It pleases me to see you well.
You are very welcome. It pleases me to see you again today. Your visit was short a few days ago. You know, Ptah, when Florina came here last week to give me your answer, I was in the kitchen with some members of the group. And instead of Florina calling me, she entered the hallway and went into the living room, and the draft tore the door out of her hand, which slammed shut with a loud bang. So Silvano and I rushed into the living room to see where no one was. So I went into the bedrooms and found Florina behind the door in Selina's bedroom, and she gave me a signal to go to my office. Then she was already beaming over to my office, where I quickly followed her.
It was a little careless of me, but I thought that I could call you into the living room when I was there to talk to you there. But the draft of the wind tore the door out of my hand, so it slammed.
Unfortunately, thanks to Ava, there's often a draft in the house, because she always opens the windows at awkward moments.
It was embarrassing for me.
There was no reason to, because the same mishap happens to us. But now be greeted, my child.
I have come here because I have reconsidered your wish, which you expressed during my last visit, that you would like to have a portrait drawing of me. I can now agree to that. Since I am not gifted for such portrait drawings, I have asked Todd to make such a drawing of me in your presence. That is the reason why I am here now.
I am flattered. Here, Ptah, there is paper and a pencil. And you, Florina. Thank you, my child. You give me great pleasure.
If I may sit here in this position?
Of course, anything is fine with me. You can sit right here in my chair, my friend, and get started.
Thank you. Let us see.
Ptah draws for about 15 minutes.
So this is my work, if you can use it that way, Edouard. To develop it exactly, I would need a longer time, but Barbara and Christian can also do that.
That is not a question. Thank you for that, and of course, thank you, Florina. Even if it is only a pencil drawing and not a photo, the portrait will undoubtedly represent you. Thank you, and you, Ptah, you are very good at this. If I had your ability in this field, I would have asked for a long time ago to be allowed to draw all the portraits of all my contact friends. Unfortunately, however, I have been an absolute failure in portrait drawing since I was a child, so I have limited myself to simple drawing and painting.
Then I want to leave now, because I have to devote myself to my work again. Farewell, dear father friend. As always, it was a great pleasure for me to visit you. Goodbye.
Take care and goodbye, and once again thank you very much.
So if you want, you can ask Barbara Harnish and Christian Krakowski to work out my drawing because they have better skills than mine, because I could only spend a short time on it. There is nothing to be said against having the two of them work out my drawing, as they also have good drawing skills.
Okay, I will. By the way, an American has colored the portrait drawings of you, Quetzal, Svath, and Simyase, and they look fantastically good. If I get a colored printout, I can show it to you. We strive to use the color images for ourselves.
Florina, drawn by Ptah on 27th of April 2007. Florina, drawing prepared by Barbara Harnish. Florina, drawing prepared by Christian Krakowski.
That is also known, and the coloring of the drawings is really very well done. The person who did the whole thing shows great skill in this respect. If you are in contact with her, then pay her my compliments.
Let me ask you a question about overpopulation. In the animal and wildlife world, when overpopulation occurs, it is naturally reduced, on the one hand, by the onset of mass extinction, and, on the other hand, by the creation of infertility for a period of time, which prevents the procreation of offspring. But what is the situation with humans? Are the same factors occurring? Or can the problem be solved by humans alone in terms of a strict birth control as we propagate it? In my opinion, it can be assumed that people can only be brought to their senses in their self-importance by a corresponding law of strict birth control. Because in their delusion, they simply want to have many descendants and think that they have a right to them. It is true that many people die of epidemics, which do not occur for nothing, as well as through wars and other acts of murder. But this does not have such an effect on overpopulation that it would be reduced. If the laws of nature should intervene, which lead to the decimation of the overpopulation, as for example through mass deaths as a result of epidemics, or through the infertility of man and woman, then people are so crazy in their delusion that if many people die, they produce all the more offspring. And if males and females of the human species become infertile, they fall into the irresponsible delusion that they have to create offspring through artificial reproduction. That is how I see it all.
With which you see the whole problem correctly. In fact, nature itself is already defending itself against the human overpopulation on Earth. Namely, by making the human beings or the female and male sexes increasingly infertile, as is also the case, as you correctly say, in the animal and wildlife world when an overpopulation arises. As we have observed, in the so-called civilized world, 1 in 5 women already shows signs of infertility in the female sex, although the male sex does not lag behind in this respect either, whose fertility is greatly reduced. But this problem is irrationally and irresponsibly tried to be bridged in the way you have explained, namely by resorting to artificial insemination. But this irresponsibly counteracts the natural decomposition of overpopulation, whereby all imaginable problems of humankind increase inexorably. Even with the epidemics and the resulting mass deaths, the overpopulation can no longer be dealt with in a normal framework. And consequently, even worse epidemics will have to appear and spread pandemically if the Earth humans do not listen to our advice and take legal measures to radically reduce and minimize the birth rate.
The future of earthly humanity requires great, courageous, and progressive ideas, thoughts, and actions. But clarifications are also necessary. Clarification must be constantly and repeatedly fought through, both in relation to overpopulation and religions. Catholic Christianity in particular must be pilloried, because no other religion demands and promotes the overpopulation more vehemently than this one, with the imbecilic saying, "Go forth and multiply."
Your words are good and valuable, but few Earth humans will want to hear them. Only those who can recognize and understand the truth.
Unfortunately, this is true because the majority of humankind does not want to know the truth. That is why there are many opponents who in their antagonism insult, slander, and call all those as weirdos who strive to shout the effective truth out into the world in order to create a better future for all humankind. These antagonists are theologians, scientists, and so-called clergymen, as well as the rabble and all the ignorant people. Well, so it is, but let us leave it. Do you still have some predictions that can be mentioned officially?
I have already said what needs to be mentioned, and I can only tell you what is new on my next visit. Until then, goodbye.